Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Business from Scratch podcast. I'm your host, Abby McGee, and today we're going to talk about something near and dear to the heart of my business, Salt and Charm, and that is how we created our brand voice and how we consistently check everything we do against that voice. I've heard some version of, we need to sound more professional from a lot of business owners, and every time I hear it, I think, professional compared to what? From the very beginning, Salt and Charm has never once tried to sound like a traditional catering company. We've been a little salty, a little irreverent, deeply serious about the food and the hospitality, and loud about all of it from day one. And I genuinely believe that voice or that personality is one of the reasons this business took root in Wilmington as fast as it did. So today I want to talk about what brand voice actually is, why we get it wrong sometimes, and how to make sure you don't sound like a robot wrote your content, and what it looks like to turn your marketing into a real conversation instead of just a wall of ads nobody asked for. So let's get into it. You're listening to Business from Scratch, the podcast for people building businesses they love without losing themselves along the way. I'm your host, Abby McGee. Let's get started. Okay, let's start with the basics because the term brand voice gets thrown around a lot without anyone really defining it. Brand voice is not your logo, it's not your colors, it's not your tagline. This is something we've talked about in a couple of episodes, the one with Brave Creative and the one with Drew and Kate. You should go listen to those if you haven't already. Brand voice is the personality that lives in every word you put into the world, whether that's on your website, your emails, your Instagram captions, or even your out-of-office reply. It's the thing that makes someone read something and think, that sounds like them, even before they see the name attached to it. But if you're writing for credibility instead of connection, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. There is a temptation to sound professional, so we sand off every sharp edge until what's left is technically correct, but completely forgettable. In my industry, that would sound something like locally sourced, or unforgettable experiences, or passionate about hospitality. Technically, that's all true, but also true of literally every other caterer from here to kingdom come. Instead, let me challenge you to think of it this way. If your business were a person at a dinner party, what would they be like? What would they order? Would they be funny or serious? The storyteller or the listener? Would you want to sit next to them? That person has a voice, and our job is to figure out what that voice sounds like. Once we have that figured out, then the question is how to let it show up in our marketing instead of hiding it behind industry language because we're afraid of turning someone off. So my main business is a luxury catering company called Salt and Charm. We talk about it a lot. I was passionate from the beginning about not sounding like everyone else. And that came naturally because it wasn't built like everyone else anyway. From the very first Instagram caption, the very first email, the first line on the website, the voice has been the same. It's been warm, direct, a little salty, even though we try for charming. And we were still completely serious about the food. That wasn't a branding decision made in some big strategy session. It wasn't something a consultant handed me. It was just how I talked about what we already do. And it turned out that's exactly what people were hungry for. So what does a little salty but we try for charming actually look like in practice? It means the copy doesn't beg for your attention. It assumes you're smart enough to get it. It means we can be confident about the quality of what we do without turning it into a brochure. It means when something is funny or shocking, we say the funny or shocking thing. It means the staff bios sound like real people wrote them about real people they actually like. And there is a business lesson here because that isn't just about sounding cute on Instagram. Salt and Charm built real recognition in Wilmington, and we did it fast. Not just customers, but actual community. People who felt like they knew the brand before they ever booked an event. And that didn't happen because our logo was pretty. It happened because there's a real personality behind the business that people could connect to. And in a smallish city like Wilmington, that connection compounds fast. Word of mouth travels differently when people have a story to tell about you and not just a service to report. Okay, so now we're going to talk about something that we need to talk about because it's the elephant in every marketing room right now, and that's AI. So I'm not super anti-AI. I use it sort of. A lot of us do. It's a real tool and it saves real time. But what's happening is everyone is using the same tools with the same prompts and getting the same output. And it sounds like this. At Salt and Charm, we are passionate about delivering exceptional experiences that exceed your expectations and create lasting memories. You've read that. You've probably used something close to it. And the reason it feels hollow is because it was never written by a person who meant it. It was assembled from generic prompts. That's a huge difference. And your customers can feel that difference even if they can't name it. But let's be real, most people these days can name it. The thing about AI-generated content is that it's been trained on the average of everything ever written, which means it defaults to the middle. It's not wrong, it's just nobody. And a nobody voice doesn't build a business. I think, and Lord God, do I hope that the pendulum is going to swing back to humanness. I believe that is what we are all wanting to be the case. But if you're choosing to use AI, how can you use it as a tool without letting it flatten your voice? Use it the way you'd use a first draft from an intern. You give it direction, you take what it gives you, and then you rewrite it in your own words. The test is simple. Read it out loud, and if it doesn't sound like you would say it, then rewrite it until it does. AI can get you 60% of the way there and do it fast. The other 40% is where your voice lives, and that part is still yours to do. For the love of God, don't outsource the 40%. That's what people are actually paying attention to. The reality is that most business owners know their brand is boring, but they just think boring is safer. If you sound like everyone else, you can't really be criticized. But if you put a real personality out there, someone might not like it. Spoiler alert, someone is absolutely not going to like it. They are not your people, and it's good to have a way to weed them out. The businesses that sound like everyone else usually don't become anyone's favorite. They get used but not loved. They get booked when nothing else is available, but not referred by someone who can't stop talking about them. The real risk isn't that your personality turns some people off. The real risk is that your blandness turns everyone off. You can be polished and still interesting, credible and still warm, sophisticated and still have a sense of humor. These are not opposites. Salt and Charm does luxury events. We also write Instagram captions that make people laugh. Those things are not in conflict. This episode is brought to you by Salt and Charm. We're a catering and events company based right here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we've been feeding this community for a while now. We offer full-service catering for weddings, corporate events, and private dinners, the kind of food and hospitality that makes people stop mid-conversation and say, "Wait, what was that?" We also offer meal prep delivery and pickup because it turns out the people who hire us for their celebrations also want someone to handle Tuesday night dinner. And honestly, same. If you're planning an event or you're just tired of figuring out what's for dinner, we would love to be your people. Find us at saltandcharm.co or on Instagram at saltandcharm. And just for our listeners here on the podcast, use code podcast for 10% off your next meal prep purchase. Now, let's get into an even bigger issue that business owners need to really get honest about. Most small business marketing is just talking at people. Buy this, book now, limited availability, don't miss out. And calls to action do matter. I mean, we are trying to sell products to people. But if every single thing you put out is an ask, then you're training your audience to tune you out. Think about the people in your life you actually listen to. They're not the ones constantly asking you for something. They're the ones who give you something first. A laugh, a perspective you hadn't considered, a story that makes you feel less alone in whatever you're dealing with. That's what good content does. And the good news is you don't have to manufacture it. You already have the material. You have stories from every event you've ever run. You have opinions about your industry. You have things you've learned the hard way that someone else is about to learn the hard way and would give anything to know ahead of time. So share that, not instead of selling, but alongside it. Here's the way I like to think about it. For every piece of content that asks something of my audience, things like book with us, order now, follow this link. I aim for 2 or 3 pieces that just give something, whether that's a behind the scenes moment or a lesson that cost me money or sleep, an honest answer to a question I get all the time, something that made me laugh this week. When you do that consistently and when people feel like they're in a real conversation with you, not just on a mailing list, the ask lands completely different because they trust you, because they feel like they know you, because you've been showing up for them before you ever needed anything from them. That's how Salt and Charm built a community in this city, one real interaction at a time. So how do you actually find your brand voice if you feel like you've lost it or never even had it? There's 3 things. The first one is what I call the anti-list. Write down the 5 words your competitors use constantly. These are now off limits, not because they're wrong, but because they're not yours. They belong to the industry. Now ask yourself, what word would only we use? The second one is the dinner party test. Describe your brand as a person at a dinner table, not their job, their vibe. What do they order? Do they tell the story or ask the questions? Are they the person who says the thing everyone was thinking but nobody said out loud? Write that person down. That's your voice. And the third one is the read aloud test. Pull up your current website copy or your last email and read it out loud. If you'd never actually say any of those sentences in a real conversation with a real customer, you have a problem. Good brand voice passes the read aloud test. It sounds like a human being said it, one who actually cares. Once you find it, write it down in one sentence. That will become your internal marketing compass, something you can hold every piece of content up against. Ours is kind of baked into our actual name, Salt and Charm. Everything we put out gets checked. Does this sound like us, or does it sound like any other catering company? Those are 2 very different things. So before we wrap things up today, let me encourage you with this. You already have a voice. You use it every time you talk to a customer, every time you explain what you do to someone at a party, every time you text a friend about something that happened at work. The question is whether you're brave enough to let that voice show up in your marketing or whether you're going to keep hiding behind language that sounds safe but doesn't actually sound like anybody. And while you're at it, stop letting AI make you generic and stop talking at your people when you could be talking with them. Give before you ask. Sound like yourself. Say the funny thing. The best marketing decision I ever made was refusing to sound like anyone other than myself. And that was never really a decision. It was just the truth. So I'm going to give you some homework. Go read your website out loud today. Ask yourself honestly, does this sound like me? And if the answer is no, that's your starting point. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for listening and sharing the show with your people. That means the world to us. We'll see you next week and every Tuesday for new episodes. Thanks for joining me on Business from Scratch. Follow the show for more honest conversations about building a business that works for you.